Our relationship manager for Scotland, Craig Beattie, recently caught up with one of his valued intermediaries around how Aldermore helped his client who had experienced some financial difficulties.
Hi Ben, thanks for joining us today. You've given us some really good feedback on a case you recently submitted to Aldermore. Can you tell me why you used Aldermore recently?
Sure. So I had a really lovely couple that were recommended to me through existing clients of mine, and they had previously owned their own home, but they had had some issues with a family bereavement that was very close to them, and unfortunately this led to a short period of some financial difficulty in the household. And at the time they felt the best thing to do was to sell the property and move into rented accommodation. Now, when they spoke to me, their credit files were still not quite perfect. You know, they weren't terrible, but their scores were still quite low. Along with that, the husband was self-employed and their deposit was still relatively small. Because of my experience with yourself and with Aldermore, I knew that this was something that would be considered on its true merit. Again, for clients such as these, that kind of method of understanding and underwriting really is vital for these types of clients. Again, a lot of these types of scenarios, they need a little bit of further explanation. We still were able to get a formal offer out within 14 working days. And I think normally that's really pretty good, but given the current climate, I mean, that's excellent.
No, that's brilliant, and you hit some good points there. Call us in advance. As a relationship manager, I always want that phone call at the beginning of the journey, not at the end, because it's two different conversations.
Absolutely.
And you knowing your client and knowing what the lender needs and packaging it right, it just kicks the journey off on a brilliant start. Well done, that's brilliant. Could you give me 3 words that come to mind when you think of Aldermore?
Sure. I'd say, first of all, reliable. I feel that whenever you place a case with you and with the bank, you know exactly what you're going to get. The other thing I would say is flexible. You are very much a lender that will take a flexible approach to the client and to the situation, and it's never just a closed books situation. Certainly with the client I used recently, they needed that flexible approach, and you guys were the perfect fit for them. The last thing I'd say is open-minded, and that's kind of hand in hand with flexible, but you always will take the bigger picture view on things, and you guys are excellent at being able to make a judgment call, looking at all of the facts.
Brilliant. Common sense lending, really, isn't it?
Exactly. For me, you're almost the first thought for me in terms of, a client that just needs that little bit of a different approach to their lending, whether that be that they've had some difficulties in the past or they've had some hiccups, or whether that's because they're a professional limited company landlord that's looking to build a portfolio. Again, for me, you guys are the first port of call, the first company that kind of comes to my head for that type of thing. I can contact Aldermore and I can speak to a person, and I can always rely and trust on the answer that I'm going to get from them. And I think when you're speaking to colleagues and peers in the market, it's always a very positive conversation that I'm having when we mention Aldermore.
Absolutely brilliant. That's absolutely fantastic, Ben. Thanks very much for your time today. It's really appreciated.
No problem at all. It was a pleasure.